Welcome to this Astro Priestesses Roundtable. We are featuring the Leo solar month this month, and we're going to start with a little bit from the Cancer solar month, just because it's so important and we didn't really cover it as fully as we can now. And that is with the Cancer new moon on July 17th, and the nodes moving into Aries Libra for the first time since 2004. It's about every 18 and a half years. And as I was tuning into this, I realized that the last time the nodes moved into Aries Libra was December 26th of 2004. And that happened to be the day of the big tsunami in Thailand that killed like 230,000 people. It was like this just major shift. And when I went back and looked at that date, it also happened to be a Cancer full moon. And it was out of bounds. And it was this powerful, just this thing that happened on planet Earth at that time with this Cancer out of bounds moon, full moon, and the nodes shifting into the new sign. So now in 2003, 18 and a half years later, we have the nodes shifting into Aries Libra at a Cancer new moon, also out of bounds, and a pretty extreme out of bounds moon it is. So that means it's a wild card factor. And so what's going to happen? And one of the things that somebody asked me was like, that they were very affected by the tsunami in 2004, and they said, how do we look at that? Well, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if there's going to be another major event. We don't know if, it's like clearly she made it through that time. I don't know if she was in Thailand or why she felt that was such a personal event, but we can always create protection around us. So this is something I do every day. I ask the 100% benevolent guardian angels, beings of light, master teachers, guides, ascended masters, helping spirits, power animals, and ancestors for myself. Then I might add a few more things to that, but that's my definitely go-to, asking for their love, guidance, support, and protection to be within and around me in every moment of every day. So we can do that. And for me, that helps me just to relax and to be present and to trust that whatever's going to happen, I am being loved, guided, supported, and protected in that moment. So I think that's the main thing I want to say about that right now. And I'm going to hand this off because I know there's more amazing things to share about this time.
I love that, Kaylin. I feel that the energy of the new moon sort of leading us into this coming Leo season and the nodal shift is so important because we talk about this a lot when it comes to new moons. It's like new moon, new me. We are awaiting the seeding. We are becoming more receptive. I'm almost never suggesting like, let's make an intention at this new moon other than I'm being open. I'm ready to receive. So it feels like it's kind of like taking new moon, new me to the next level. With this new moon coming in with Aries, this sign of the spark, the creative fire, it's direct from source. There's more spontaneity. There's going to be greater trust of instinct and trusting of our bodies, and also trusting of how we need to take care of ourselves, how we need to protect ourselves or protect what we're creating. So that combined with Cancer, sort of leading us into this very nurturing, sort of holding us in the safety, this nest, this beautiful, great mother energy as we enter this 1.5-year journey with the North Node in Aries. It feels just such a potent time to be in your, whatever is your container, your sacred container for this new you that's wanting to be birthed.
And I will add, I think the image of the tsunami is very, like we can really go deep into that, because even if we weren't in Thailand during that time, everybody has been in a tsunami in the past years. And this new moon feels like this opportunity for regeneration. And what is it that we can feel safe within ourselves? So we have the mother power to give birth to a different reality. And for me, Cancer is always seen as this very sensitive, vulnerable sign. And it's true, like Cancer people has this really feeling everything and very sensitive, especially like Cancer moons. But at the same time, there is such a strength in vulnerability and feelings and that nurturing energy of a mama bear who can go anywhere and do anything. And this new moon is opposing Pluto. So it's really asking us to do that cleaning in the Capricorn area, to really connect with the feelings that we didn't allow ourselves to feel sometimes, and without attachment on like why I'm feeling that. It's just like, I think in that new moon, it's really interesting. Like if we feel like crying, just cry. Like we don't need the story. The body needs to cry. You are angry, just push some pillows and let it out. Like there is no need to know the reasons why the body feels what it's feeling. It's just allowing life to flow through us. And that's something that I feel that Pluto in Capricorn is really asking us to, how can we create systems and structures that allow us to feel safe in order to also tap into the Cancer energy of feeling and finding our tribe and finding the people around that we can be vulnerable. And in order to create anything, a project, a business, a book, a baby, a family, a recipe, tribe, when we are creating something from the heart, I think it's a very vulnerable situation as well, because it's bringing into the world something that has been deep inside of us. So I think that new moon is really asking us, what is it that you are creating consciously, and feel like tap into the feelings of that creation, not only with the mind. And then be brave with the Aries, Libra, nodal axis, and then the people will show up, right? But I find this a lot of times because I also mentor like business women, and it's like, no, I want to co-create with somebody else. And of course, but sometimes we need to initiate ourselves for the other people to show up in an equal relationship. And I think that Nodal axis will tell us a lot of that. Like you need to be brave yourself to initiate something that only you can create. And it's something that it feels emotionally connected with the new moon. And then the people will show up.
I love everything that everyone is sharing. And I just find it so wild that at the time of the new moon, the lunar nodes, the new moon at 24 Cancer, the lunar nodes are at 0 degrees and 0 arc minutes, Taurus, Scorpio. So they're about to move into Aries, Libra that day of the new moon. But at the moment of the new moon, they're at 0, 0, 0, 0, Taurus, Scorpio. And that's like a very pure energy. Yes, the lunar nodes have like gone backwards all the way through Taurus, Scorpio. So it's like the culmination of really this like new way of being, because anytime anything's at 0 degrees, 0 arc minutes, I mean, this is just like pure potential, infinite possibility here. And so I see there's this energetic of a lot of possibility with this new moon. And you know, this new moon creates this grand cross with we've had this T-square with the lunar nodes at the beginning of Taurus, Scorpio, and Pluto, which is now at the end of Capricorn. And this new moon is going in there and creating this grand cross. And this out of bounds new moon, like Caitlin said, this like kind of wild card energy. And I feel like the intuitive message that's been coming to me for this new moon is like, especially new moon in Cancer opposite Pluto, squaring the lunar nodes. It's like we have this opportunity to kind of catalyze the start and maybe in a new way of gosh, I have the feeling, but how do I say it? It's like this, you know, this Pluto going back in Capricorn again. It's like and with this new moon squaring it, there's this invitation to kind of like transform past the old paradigm, like Mara, you spoke to, like the old systems, the old structures of the patriarchal culture. As Pluto's going back into Capricorn, it's like, okay, we have a little more transforming of that to open up to this new way of being, these new systems, these new structures that are more sustainable for us and the earth and all beings. And so there's like this intuitive message about like creating this like new home within to support like transforming past the old paradigm, is what kind of like the intuitive message for me for this new moon.
Cool. And just in case you don't get to see this before the new moon, because that's happening tomorrow, and we'll get this posted and so on, but people might not be seeing it until a little bit later. The energy is still available. We don't have to be right with it in the moment. That energy is still available to us because there's something that's being seeded in that moment that we can tap into at any time. So just wanted to make sure people understand that. And so then what we have within a few days is on July 22nd, that happens to be the Magdalene feast day. This was something that was put into place. I think it was back in the 60s. Finally, they decided to honor her and stop vilifying her. And one of the things I love is that there are now a lot of Magdalene priestess processes. I got to do one back in the 90s. And it's just everywhere. So there's this honoring of that. And I don't know if they knew when they picked it that it was the day that the sun moves into Leo. But it feels like, of course, she was a queen. She had that sovereign energy. She was, and a lot of information has come out now that she was probably married to Yeshua or Jesus, or however you want to say that. So anyway, I love this day. It's just a powerful day. Just the fact that the sun's moving into Leo and it's the Magdalene feast day. And it's also the day of the first exact square to the minute. So as the nodes are coming into Aries Libra on the new moon on July 22nd, the exact to the minute square to Pluto. So it comes in square to Pluto. The exact to minute square happens on the 22nd. There's going to be 2 more exact to the minute squares on I think it's July 24th or 25th, depending on your time zone, and July 28th. And then it stays within a degree for a few more weeks, and then it stays within 5 degrees until mid-December. So Pluto is being powerfully engaged in this nodal shift as well. So not only is the shift happening on the day of the new moon, it's also in this very precise square to Pluto. And I went back and looked, and the last time Pluto was square the nodes, it was Libra Aries, was back in 2015. I think it was January 15th of 2015. And then the last time Pluto was square the north node in Aries and the south node in Libra was back in the 1771 or something like that. So it's been a long time since we've had this kind of activation for planet Earth. And of course, we know what happened after the early 1700s. 1776 was the revolution, the Declaration of Independence, and creating the United States of America, that was created on high ideals but never has lived up to it. So I wonder what's going to happen with all of that. Maybe some of because really Pluto's job is to shine a light on the shadow, the things that haven't been lived up to in the way that they were intended, and what's in the way of that, and how do we transmute, transform, and clear that so that we can have the experience of that. And if we look at Aries North Node, it's the relationship to self. How are we relating to ourselves? How are we standing for ourselves? How are we being the best people we can be? And then the South Node, Libra, and how are we relating to others? And how are we doing it in a way where it's not having power over others, but literally being able to create that co-creative round table, like your gifts are just as important as my gifts, and my gifts are just as important as everybody else's gifts, but not necessarily more important. And how are we tuning into that over this time? And how is Pluto shining a light on where that's not happening, or what's in the way of that happening, so we can transmute, transform, and clear that? So also we'll come back to this piece probably, because I think we probably want to talk about the Pluto square of the nodes, but also on this day is when Venus is stationing retrograde in Leo. So with that, I'm going to turn it over and see where it's going to go next.
I just think this ingress to Leo time is so karmically potent. I mean, we have the whole karmic axis incredibly lit up. Everything that you were speaking about and is really central. It's the conscious evolution journey. I think that's why we come to astrology, is because we want to understand our evolution journey on purpose and engage with all of this to the best of our conscious ability. But then Pluto is always bringing in the unconscious. So I feel like there's this huge energy of connecting the invisible with the visible, or understanding all that's being created in the invisible realms. And the Venus retrograde, I think, really speaks to that, because she's coming into this invisible time soon and asking us to look within. But she's also the planetary ruler of the South Node. She's making this switch. She's going from planetary ruler of the North Node that we've had in Taurus over the past year and a half, which has been guiding us into deeper self-sovereignty, self-sufficiency, self-containment, and understanding our own personal creative journey. And then now she's going to shift her rulership to the South Node and perhaps help us to integrate. I love what you said, Maud, around co-creation, maybe helping us integrate and understand a little bit more about our relational dynamics, and how all of that is coming into our evolutionary process in some way, because we're not doing this alone. And I think, so I hope I'm not going to get too technical here, but I feel like I want to just bring this into the conversation because it feels so huge. Right now, Pluto being retrograde in Capricorn, but he already entered Aquarius. So he's already in that Aquarius cycle now. It's already begun. So Venus being retrograde in Leo, retrogrades always reflect on the opposite sign for their strategy when they're struggling, or when they're trying to understand the wholeness of that polarity. So the Leo Aquarius is still very potent, including this Venus with the Pluto, being where he is. So it's really interesting to me. Like the Aries and the Leo have a very strong relationship. They're both fire. They're both about our personal creative journey and what's wanting to be birthed, and this new flame wanting to be ignited within us. And then there's this air on the other side for both, where Pluto is in his cycle, Aquarius, and the Libra. So conversation, communication, the reflections from other people. It's almost like we get to do this guess and test experimentation of putting ourselves out there, and maybe even internal, like invisible visioning around potentials, different trajectories, maybe even different timelines, like looking into the future and playing it out with different people in our lives, and kind of witnessing different kinds of reflections. Like who you are is going to change a little bit depending on who you're around, because we all pull something, we magnetize something out of other people. And I think both Venus and Pluto speak to magnetism. So I think this is a really important time to understand, well, where is our magnet what is it attuned to? And what are the people around us? What are they adding to that? And what's the relationship there? And are there karmic patterns of maybe codependency? Sorry to say it, we got to bring it into this conversation. Are there codependent patterns around what you create? I think what you said earlier, Maud, it just really sparked something with me. It's like you just sometimes need to initiate your own thing, and then the other people will show up. But if you're always waiting for somebody else to initiate, you might never leave the front door. You might never get to go and have your big adventure. And I feel like that's what the North Node in Aries is really inviting, and Pluto is kind of this catalyst back here saying you might need to do some deep subconscious, hidden, invisible work around your fears, around what's the worst that could happen, right? You learn something and you maybe make some mistakes, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's this one precious life, right? So I think this moment is just so big for that. And again, it's not like everything happens in one day. We get to carry this with us for the whole season and beyond. I would say even into this whole next year and a half with this nodal axis. So don't feel like you have to like, oh my gosh, these are huge things. I have to do this all in one day. It's not going to happen like that. But be open, just curious and listen and what wants to drop in for you around all of that. And trust yourself. I think that's what the self-trust is going to be everything with this North Node in Aries time.
I love so much everything, and it's so amazing. Like this is an example of what is it to co-create. Like everyone is bringing their own passion and creativity and inspiration, and we are doing more together that we will be able to do on our own. And I think that's the magic of this nodal axis, like release every thought of I'm not enough, I don't know enough, I need more titles to certify me in order to show up as I am. And I think with Aries is not about an Aries nodal North Node, and then the connection with the new cycle in Leo for Venus. It's a very interesting connection. And I keep finding these both cycles are really nice, like the nodal axis and the cycles of Venus and how they are interwoven. And in this one particularly that we are starting, is so interesting that the same day that Venus goes retrograde is the same day that is the exact square. And like there is this initiation of showing up as you are, like super authentic, and fire energy, Leo and Aries, they don't think before acting, right? It's like there is no Libra thinks a lot, right? And Libra is really contemplating the other person and listening to the other person, and sometimes it's listening so much that it's not listening to what the gut is saying, like what is it within you that is telling you that this is not the right person for you, or that this job can sound really good, but your body is telling you don't go there. So I think with Leo and Aries is listening to the heart and the solar plexus, both of them together, and just trust that we have done enough work to be able that sometimes we need to step, like we need to do one step in order for the path to be illuminated. Like it won't until we are not brave to do that. And that happens a lot when we are bringing things into life, like we don't see the path until we are starting. And with Venus, I will also say that any cycle is amazing to do it ceremonially, and like Kailin is leading, and I'm super grateful that I got initiated into the Venus cycle. It's spreading so much. It's spreading in Spanish. When I started being aware of this cycle, and I was talking about it as well in the Spanish astrology community, nobody knew about the cycle. Everybody was talking only about the star point. But now there are more and more and more women being initiated in this priestess temple, because with Venus, I think it's a temple. So I will highlight that please find a guide, or if you have done it, be a guide in your local community following the cycle, because it's life-changing, and it's a really nice way to connect with the present moment, because I think that's also that Leo and Aries are very good at. Like, it's not about planning ahead. It's about what is the present moment asking you to share, and trusting that you are connected to the energy. So, and it's what we're doing here, right? Like sometimes we know what we are going to say, sometimes we don't know. And it's okay. It's like we have studied astrology already. So now we can just tap and say what it needs to be said. And I think that self-worth, self-confident, and especially for women, I keep seeing it a lot for women, like this is a call for us to show up and to really trust that we are bringing something that is worth sharing.
Oh, I love that. I'm inspired. And I love that you're speaking to like trusting the spontaneity, because that's just so much of the fire energy Venus and Leo, this new Leo cycle that's starting in August, and the Aries North Node. And the North Node, it opens up new energy. So it opens up the energetic flow for our collective and personal evolution. So we're going to have the North Node in Aries, South Node in Libra for basically a year and a half, starting on July 17th. And Aries is about new directions, new pathways forward. And like already said, the Aries energy is just, I'm inspired and I'm just instinctually moving with that inspiration. Aries is, the cardinal spark of life. Aries is a sign that is very connected to spirit. It's just like, I feel that spark of spirit, that spark of inspiration, right? Inspiration has the word spirit in it. I feel the spark of spirit. And I'm just moving with it instinctually. And so with the North Node moving into Aries, this is about, Aries, trailblazing, going new pathways forward, new directions. There's a lot of new energy that's wanting to open up. And we've had a lot of Aries energy this year already that's kind of been setting the stage. Like earlier, December of last year to May of this year, we had Jupiter in Aries kind of like opening up that Aries energy for us. And now the North Node's going in there. And with the South Node in Libra and the North Node in Aries, the South Node in Libra, we're releasing karmically what is not in alignment for us in relationships at this moment. And we're also, and it's already kind of been spoken about, but we're releasing like old identities of how we've been basing our image of ourselves based on who we're relating with and our relationships. So, and like, just, for example, like Mar, you really inspired me when you were sharing this, like sometimes, right, like we can listen and we can listen so much to the other that we're not listening to ourselves. But I don't know if you've ever had those experiences. Like I love to receive input from others and hear their perspective, and especially things about my own life. But sometimes we can spend so much time like asking people for their advice or their opinion or what would they do, but everybody's going to be bringing that based off of their own life experiences, and everybody's going to be bringing in their own self-limiting beliefs and those kinds of things into the conversation. So sometimes it's like, I feel like this North Node in Aries, it's like, no, like release where we've been like overly seeking reflection and input from other people, and to come inward and trust ourselves. And so there's like this whole new way of seeing ourselves, our self-concept, connecting to our sense of self-agency, the belief that like we can go out and be these magical co-creators. There's something really, really powerful about that. And I feel like as the lunar nodes, go on July 22nd and square Pluto, where the energy is leading us towards is this North Node in Aries. So there's all this releasing of, South Node in Libra. What's not in alignment for us in relationships anymore? Where have we been overly attuned to other people or fitting into the stepping into the role or the image that other people want of us, like releasing that. And then Pluto in Capricorn, where have we been trying to fit into society or do what we feel like we were conditioned into? This is where we're releasing that. We're releasing the conditioning from the old paradigm, and we are moving forward into like this new frequency, this new earth frequency, however you want to say that. There's lots of ways to say that. So there's something about this like deep self-trust and just instinctually trusting the flow of spirit, where it's like our own direct line of connection to spirit and source. And at the time that the lunar nodes are squaring Pluto, Venus is stationing retrograde in Leo that day, and she's traditionally speaking, the ruling planet of Leo. And I feel like this big theme of this Venus retrograde, Leo is showing up to life like fully expressed, however that is, showing up in how we are in the moment, free to be me, essentially letting our light shine big and bright, but just showing up however we are, fully expressed. Most of us don't feel comfortable showing up fully expressed in the moment because we've had some messages like, too much, tone it down, or we've been made fun of when we were younger, whatever it is. So we learn to hide aspects of our authentic self. And so I feel like the Venus retrograde in Leo, there's a lot of themes of it, but one is clearing blocks that will allow us to show up more fully expressed. And this is me, this is who I am in the moment.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh. So that reminds me that something I was asked to share about, and so just to say, the Venus retrograde in Leo, starting on July 22nd, and then the whole Venus cycle in Leo for 19 months. And we have the North Node in Aries for 18 months. So they are in this tracking thing together this whole time. And so first, I think one of the things is that we need to remember that to be within our sovereign selves, that we're not trying to fit in to get along, go along to get along kind of idea that we might have had, but to really be true to who we are, as you were saying, Jamie, beautifully said. And if we're looking at our relationships to others. So I had a dear priestess sister, as I was ending my second marriage, say to me, she called this in for me. And if this is something that you would like to call in for yourself, this is something you can do. And that is to be in relationship first to yourself and then with others, in having somebody who will meet you in the ways you need to be met, who will communicate with you in the ways you need to be communicated with, who will support you in the ways you need to be supported, who will celebrate you in the ways you need to be celebrated, who will love you for who you are and not who they want you to be. So important. And then that you can do the same for them, because then we're in a place of balanced, not having to try to fit into what we think somebody wants us to be. I might have done that in the past. But I am now in a situation where I'm not doing that. I've finally grown and evolved to the place where I can be in a relationship where all those things are true. And so this one, as Nura was saying, it won't happen in a day. It's, we've got plenty of time. And a lot of it is, how are we loving ourselves? Because if we don't love ourselves, we're not going to be able to be in a relationship that is truly going to love us, to be loved in the ways we need to be loved, to be loving towards others in the ways we want to be loving towards others. And so these are the things that we're energizing. And not only that, so then Venus is going to drop out of the evening sky. She's going to conjunct the sun, and she's going to rise up into the morning sky and start a new Venus cycle that will last for 19 months. It starts on August 19th, right as we get ready to go into the next solar month. And she's going to square Uranus during this time, and she's got all these different things that are going on. So lots of amazing things. But also the day after she stations retrograde, Chiron stations retrograde, and guess where Chiron is? In Aries. So we have this Aries North Node thing, Venus and Leo thing that's already been talked about, and then Chiron stationing retrograde in Aries, adding a whole, like, what do we need to heal within ourselves in order to be able to have the courage to go forward in the best ways possible? So with that, who's next?
Well, you touched on it. That's exactly where I was going to go. I was like, Chiron is everywhere now for the next year and a half. Definitely, we will be working on this big time. Even the next year's, there will be a new moon solar eclipse in Aries. This is like in 2024. I'm just like super in the future with this, but Chiron, it'll be conjunct Chiron. We will be in this deep self-healing journey. And I do find it very interesting that Chiron is stationing retrograde at 19 degrees. I know it's at 58 minutes, so it's like almost at 20 degrees, but still with that 19 degrees in degree theory that's ruled by Libra. So even that retrograde in Aries. And so every retrograde, again, just to reiterate, it's always going to bring in both sides of the whole spectrum. So you might feel like you're actually kind of ping-ponged back and forth, because that's how we learn. Like, we're not always perfectly balanced and to one side or the other, or however we're visioning the balance. Maybe it's a circle, right? I had somebody mention to me, it was just so brilliant, so genius. She's like, we think of balance as like going to this side or to this side, but what if it's, this more circular shape and it's more about coming to the center? And that coming to the center, I feel like, is such a solar idea. Even if you imagine, if you want to search real quick, what does the glyph of the sun look like in the chart? It's a dot at the center with a circle around it, a circle of spirit with the individual in the center. We need to know ourselves. We need to know what is at the center. And I'm bringing this in, might seem a little bit far how I'm getting here, but Aries is a sign that the sun is exalted in. So there's always that connection of Aries and the sun too. And we're talking about this happening in Leo season. So it's all very solar. And the sun in all mythology, if you read any, Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung and any sort of archetypal understanding of self, it's all the hero's journey. It's all about you. It is all about you, and you are me and I am you, and we are all one. And you need to live your life from your lens. You need to live it from your way of being and understanding, and not discounting how special you are. And I feel like that's all up for review. And there was something so funny that came to my mind, Jamie, when you were talking about, not always asking, and like we want a resource out, like, oh my gosh, I love hearing all of your wisdom. I couldn't live my life without mentors and friends like you. But it's like, I remember I have teachers who would say, and I thought this was so brilliant, it made me never want to cheat on a test, because he's like, well, what if you're looking at somebody else's paper and they have it wrong? You know what I mean? Like, why are you trusting them more than you're trusting yourself and your own response and your own, like, what you're going to come up with? Like, they might have it wrong. Like, and why are you comparing yourself to them? So there's so much of that, I think, tied in to all of this.
Yes. And I would like to add the Mars piece into that, because it's in Virgo. That is a very interesting, and is during the new moon, is opposing Saturn and then moving into a exact opposition to Saturn in Pisces. And it's interesting because both of them are like in the background, like Mars in Virgo, it seems that it's not that much there. And Saturn in Pisces is completely like, okay, Saturn suddenly has disappeared a little bit from the vision of, but it's there, right? Like there is this background of discernment with Virgo, like taking action into like really honesty. I love the Virgo, and then the Pluto in Capricorn and Virgo has this practical reality check. So in our minds, everything is like light and love and all of this, but what is really your life? Like, look around to your friends, look around to your space, look around to what is it that can have a little bit of discernment, and yes and no. And I think with that North Node in Aries, with the guiding principle of Mars, is like, I always find, and this is something that I always teach to my students, like Mars needs to first listen to the inner planets. Like he needs to listen to Venus before taking action. And that's where we are getting everything wrong, right? Like in the global level, like Mars needs to stop a little bit, listening to Venus, listening to Mercury, listening to the sun, and then when he has received all the information, taking action. And then it's a sacred yes and a sacred no. And I think with that, with Aries, there is this call of saying no to things and yes to things. And during the Venus retrograde, it's not so much about the doing, but the inner process of what is it within my life that needs a little bit of regeneration, so I can connect again with the passion of living and with my heart. And what is it within my heart that is a little bit like this and depressed or like blocked, and what is it that I need to heal? And in a very Virgo sense, like, what is it if you need to go to a healer, but you live life with an open heart, and then you find the courage of a heart that is feeling the energies. And then July 28th, Mercury enters Virgo. So it's adding this Virgo energy of practicality, like in real life, look at everything that is surrounding you, and if it's reflecting who you are at the moment, and what is it that it needs to be changed, and what steps, really small steps. Sometimes we get very overwhelmed with big things, but like one step sometimes is the only thing that is required for a big change to happen.
I just want to say something so quick about that, because right before this session, I think exactly what you're talking about. I pulled this card, Spirals of Manifestation, from this Sacred Rebels Oracle deck, in case anybody else also has this. It's new to me, so I'm like obsessed, obviously. So the Spirals of Manifestation, it talks about, and I think this is linking into that Mars opposite Saturn. It's like, it's what you're creating and what you're building is not linear. It's not a straight line. It's a spiral. So you could be doing something, and that one small step that you take could be just enough to see like, oh my gosh, the miracle is on its way. Oh my gosh, all the things I've been working so hard for are already here. And I feel like that speaks so strongly to the Saturn retrograde right now. It's like, what is pending? What gets to come to completion? What have you already worked so hard for? Where do you get to come to some type of closure? Where do you get to see all that you've already done and understand like you're already on the way, and there's no point in trying to get there early, because then it's not, it's divine timing, and Saturn rules timing. And so Mars opposing Saturn, it's like, how do we maybe need to be more, strategic or maybe more deliberate? I think earth signs and being deliberate and making careful choices and not rushing into things. I feel like Mars in Virgo, my experience of that, both in people and by transit, is very careful aiming. There's precision in what you're doing. You're not just like scattering your energy, scattering your forces. It's conserved. That's also a word for Saturn, conservation. Being kind of conservative with your energy and making sure it's like, well, if I don't have to rush into this and I don't have to like throw all my energy at it, what if I just let it come to me? These are also both yin signs, both Virgo and Pisces. Like, it's like, what if I just get to receive? What would that do?
I love that. And this reminds me of, what we were all sharing about before we started, which was this stepping into the unknown and embracing the unknown, because I love that. I feel like the Saturn Mars opposition, plus all this fiery energy we're moving into, north to going to Aries, Venus will be starting this Leo cycle. There's so much of just embracing the unknown, because the Aries North Node, to go new paths forward, we have to embrace the unknown. It's like stepping into something in life, like a timeline that we've never stepped into before. And when we're kind of like in the mind, caught up in the mind of like wanting to pre-plan everything and wanting to figure everything out, and it's like, like trying to get ahead of everything, we get ourselves like in this mind loop. And Mars and Virgo can sometimes do that, but it doesn't have to. It can also be, like you said, Nora, super brilliant at just like aiming that arrow and with precision, like just going into a new direction, and being precise with how we take action. So it's like, where are we being divinely led towards, and can we just trust and take that action when the moment is right? And something that's also kind of jumping out at me as Venus is going to be squaring Uranus. Venus and Leo will be squaring Uranus and Taurus at about the time, Venus is meeting the sun. The Venus star point will be at 20 degrees of Leo, and that will be squaring Uranus at 22 degrees of Taurus. So there's this big breakthrough, break free energy. And I feel like intuitively that there's this invitation of like, Leo is about creative self-expression of our heart. How can we just show up in any moment and our, like, I think you say it's something like this, Kate, like with radical self-love or something like that. I love that. Like, how can we show up with radical self-love and like full self-acceptance? And when we're in that energy, it's like we're in this co-creative space with the divine. And so there's this really powerful energy to have this like breakthrough, break free of just showing up more in our like wildly authentic self. And then when we can do that, like, wow, what we could create is pretty amazing, something probably beyond what we can even previously imagine what we can create.
This is, I think, bringing us back to the Pluto square the nodes, Pluto and power, and maybe where are we afraid of our own creative power, and what else would be possible if we were not afraid of that? And then Mars and Virgo, practical. Where do you need to learn some tools that can help you feel safe in your body to hold that space? I know for me, when I get to a place where I'm like, oh, I'm about to express something in a new way that maybe I haven't vetted, or I don't know how people are going to react, I get kind of nervous. Like I do the human thing, anxiety comes up, and I've had to learn very specific tools of like, okay, how do I manage anxiety in my body? Because the anxiety, it doesn't mean it's bad what I just did or said or how I showed up. It means I did something new and I'm nervous. And that's normal part of being a human. So all I need to do is, it's not just about, you know, regulating my nervous system. It's also about the self-love and self-trust piece, and understanding like this is kind of how we are when we're in a new situation. But that's what all of this is. It's brand new territory. It's the North Node Aries pioneering something, but we can use that, these current Mars and Virgo tactics of, well, what would make you feel more safe? What would make you feel more secure? What would make you feel more prepared? Virgo loves to prepare. And what are the tools you need to gather? And, you know, who are the friends? Who are the people that you need around you? All of the things. And it's also a Mercury ruled sign. What are the words that you need to hear that can help you feel just safe to be yourself, safe to express, safe to be in this massive breakthrough, breaking out into something new? It's like, well, oh my gosh, what would it mean if I'm, you know, said something and it was scandalous, or somebody didn't agree with it, or, you know, like all of these fears, all the things that come up when we express ourselves naturally. But I think we're getting an opportunity to kind of confront that. And that's the nature of Pluto. It's not easy. We talk about this, like we're smiling and we're all like light about it. It's kind of hard, you know.
It can feel like hell, just saying.
Yes.
So I think we're kind of getting towards the end. I wonder if Mar or Jamie, if you have any last words you'd like to share. And I have a quote that I want to end this with. So anything more from the two of you?
Yeah, I think Leo season is a perfect time to nurture our inner child. And so to just kind of tune in and reflect, what would my inner child need? And Leo, what would make my inner child light up right now? What would make my inner child feel joyful right now? Leo is a sign of play and joy. And so to consciously take those moments, I think can be really beautiful in Leo season.
Yeah. And I will say that sometimes we are also afraid of good things. Like it's exactly what Nora was saying. Like sometimes when something is new, we think about like changes that are unknown, no? But sometimes it's also just different, better things. Like if we have had really bad experiences our whole lives, at least that was the known. And a movie that came to my mind is a Beautiful Life, I think, that is in Netflix, that is a singer who suddenly falls in love, who suddenly gets very famous. And then the first action and response was to retreat, like to say, this is too much, because my whole life has been hell. So how suddenly life is going to be so good? So I think in many ways we are sometimes in that position that many things good can be happening and coming, and we can have that response of saying, no, I will just retreat. So getting the tools to feel safe, to expand who we are, and then feel comfortable in that new energy.
That's so good. I love everything that's been shared, and just leaning into like what you're saying, Mar, is leaning into the good things and celebrating them and embracing them and living them. And I think that's what Leo's all about, because it's here. It's how are we showing up and shining in the love light that we are. And that's not that we have to do anything other than just be that. So this is this quote, and I'm not going to say it exactly right. So just so you know, I just have it sort of mostly memorized, comes from Marianne Williamson's book, A Return to Love. And it's, to me, the summary of the Leo mysteries, because when we can come from this place, then we're inspiring others, as it says at the last moment of this quote. And that is, our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. We are all children of God. We are all meant to shine as children do. Our playing small does not serve anyone. But when we can allow our own light to shine, then we inspire others to do the same. So with that, we hope that you all have a fabulous time of coming into greater self-love. And we look forward to connecting with you in the next solar cycle as we approach the Virgo month.
Woohoo!
Bye, everybody. Love. Crap. Oh my God. Okay, wait. I can't find the button, so I'll see if I can edit this out.